Well, hello, Internet. The most common request I get is to do a Java programming tutorial in which I teach the entire language or the core Java language in one video. Today I'm going to do that, so let's get into it. Alright, so here I am in Eclipse, and if you don't know how to install Eclipse, in the description underneath the video, I provide a video that shows you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we are going to create 3 classes. A class is a blueprint for creating objects. What we do in object-oriented programming is we model real-world projects or objects in code. The very first one's going to be called Animal. Now I know this is going to be a little bit weird for what I'm going to do here, but just bear with me now. I'm also going to come in here and also create another one, and this is going to be a dog. And finish. And then the final one I'm going to create for you cat lovers is a cat. So, new, come over here, and class, come over here, and type cat. That is all we need to do. Don't need to worry about anything else, and we're just going to click on finish. Okay, so there's our classes. By this being public, that basically means anyone can access it. Class, that's what it is. A class, like I said, blueprint for creating real-world objects. If you want to have a comment inside of Java, this is a single line comment. If you want to have a multi-line comment, you put a star inside of here, and you can just type whatever you want to type, and there you go. Over and over and over again. So, single line, multi-line. If you want to import libraries, which you will do all of the time in Java, you can either go Java util scanner, which accepts user input, or you can go and import the entire library by going java util.star. There you are. Now we're going to create what is called a field, and I'm just going to start off with a complicated one. Okay, so public means that this is available to anyone else. Static means that this number is going to be shared by every animal object that is created. Final means that this is a constant and it can't be changed. Double means that this is a variable type that allows you to enter decimal places. And it's common to have finals defined with all uppercase letters. 1.6180. There you are. Now variables or fields can start off with either a letter or an underscore or a dollar sign. But more than likely you're going to start them all off with letters. I'm going to define now a private field. And by putting private on there, that basically means that it can be accessed by other methods in the class, and that's it. It's a very good idea to have all of your fields labeled as private. That way you can keep people from going in there and willy-nilly changing them. A string is just a string of characters, and I'm going to go through all the different data types that are inside of Java. Private, an int, is just an integer that can have a value of -2 to the power of 31 to 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. So, pretty big number. Well, what I'm doing here is I'm defining an animal. So it has a name. Every animal that I create is going to have a name. These are attributes. Fields are attributes for whatever we are defining. Another common attribute would be weight. Another thing that would be common is Boolean, which can have the value of true or false, is whether it has a owner or not. And we're going to define everything as not having an owner by default. These guys up here, name and weight, don't have values when they start off, and that's perfectly fine. Private. Byte would be an age, and it can have a value of -28 to 127. And we're not going to give that a value either. And every class inside of Java is going to start off with this brace right here and then end with this brace right there. Another variable type is known as a long, which is massive. It goes from -2 to the power of 63 to 2 to the power of 63. Okay, so big. And let's just say that we want to have a unique ID for all of our animals, and that's going to be a big number, and it's going to be a long. Let's say, just to be goofy, that this thing or this animal is going to have a favorite character. Characters are unsigned ints that represent UTF-16 codes for characters, just single characters. That's all you can ever put in there. Private double. Talked about already. Let's say we want to monitor the speed. It is a number with a decimal place, and it's a 64-bit number. And then you can have floats, which I never use, and it is a 32-bit number with decimals. And the reason I don't use them is because they are not very accurate. I don't use floats, I use doubles. But whenever I want something to be very accurate, I use what's called a big decimal. Now what I'm going to do is create a protected data type. And by marking it as protected, that just means that this value can only be accessed by other code in the package. So this guy right here, anything that's in this package right there. I'm also, just to make this crazy, going to make it a static integer, and this is going to be number of animals. Now remember I said a static shares the same value. Every single animal object is going to share the same value for a number of animals. And basically you want to mark any variable or function static if it doesn't make sense for an object to have that thing on its own. So for example, it wouldn't make sense for a dog to know the total number of animal objects created. If it doesn't make sense for the real world, it doesn't make sense here. Make it static. And we're going to give that default value of 0. A scanner is going to allow us to accept user input from the keyboard. And I'm going to just call this user input. And I'm creating a scanner object. And you normally do it this way, equals new scanner. And then here, by putting system in, you're saying we want to get data from the keyboard. Now, anytime an animal object is created, you need a function that is called a constructor to be executed. Here, I'm just going to right click. I'm going to go source, and I'm going to come down here and then generate constructor. There it is. And here I'm just going to put it after user input. And I've decided that I don't necessarily want this to be created with all of these different data types. So I'm just uncheck that instead. And there you go. There is your constructor. Super calls whatever the superclass was for this animal to be executed. And in this situation, animal is the superclass for dog and cat. And how you know they are a superclass is dog extends animal. Okay, so this is now a subclass of the type animal. And of course, cat is going to extend animal as well. And this is what we call inheritance, because every single field and every single method that is in animal is going to be available to these subclasses dog and cat, since it extends it, and that's inheritance. Now I don't want to call the super for this because I have no reason to. And whenever we enter the animal constructor, that means we just created a new animal. So I'm going to say number of animals needs to be increased by 1. So I'm going to put 2 pluses on there. And that would just be exactly the same as if I typed in number of animals equals number of animals plus 1. It's just shorthand notation. Now let's say that I want to come in here and add some things. So equal to 5 plus 1. This is how we add. Exactly the same as you would think. And if you want to print out, shorthand inside of Eclipse is type sysout, hold down control, hit space. You're going to use system out print line anytime you want to print something to the screen. And here we're going to go 5 plus 1 equals. This is how you put information inside of here. And since we're going to be creating a string here, you can add 2 different values together inside of print line by putting a plus. And then I want to put sum of numbers. And there we go, and that's going to print that out on a screen. Now I can go and create a whole bunch more of these, and then we can do subtraction as well. Put a negative sign in there, and I can type in diff, and then I put a subtraction here, and then I could type in diff. Also come in here and do multiplication, and that's going to be a star or an asterisk or whatever, another star, and mult. Division, / and div. And then finally we have modulus, which returns the remainder of a division, and that's a percent sign. And let's change this to 3 so we get a result here, and mod. Now if we want to execute these guys, what we have to do is I'm just going to type in main right here, control space. This is where our code is going to be executed, or this is going to be whenever we call for our program to run, this is going to be the function that is called first. Again, you understand these public static void main string arguments. If you run this on the command line, you're going to be able to provide arguments or values that are going to be stored inside of this array. And I'll get more into what arrays are later. They're just basically boxes. Okay, so if I want to execute this, I'm going to go animal, and I'm just going to call this the animal is equal to, and I'm going to create a new animal object, and I just go like that. And this guy right here is actually our constructor. And now I can come up here and click on this and go animal. Okay, so there is everything that we just did. And you can see here modulus, that's division by 3, and the division by 3 of 5 is going to give you a remainder of 2. So there's the math functions. All right, come in here and create a couple more things. I've already said before, if you want to print out stuff to the screen, just go sys out, control space, there you go. But here I want to demonstrate print and how it differs. Basically, we want to have the user enter a name for our animal. Now, the way that print line and print differ is there's no new line or a line break, you know, where they hit enter and go to the next line. Okay, so if we want that with print, we just put it in there, but it's better just to use print line because it saves you some time. Now, an if statement is going to perform the actions that are between braces if a certain condition is reached. So we're going to go user input, and we're going to say has next line. That's basically saying, did they enter a string, a series of characters? And that is a method right there. And if they did, then we are going to execute everything that lies between here and down here. And I'm going to come up here and make this uppercase. There you go. And there it is. Now, what do we want to do to accept that input? Basically, has next line basically just means, like I said, that they entered some string into the keyboard. And if it comes back as if that is true, it's going to return true, which is going to cause this to execute. This is a way for us to refer to the object that is being created because there's no other way to do that. So this is a reference to the object that was created, this guy right down here, okay? So that we can execute the proper things. And we're going to go set name, and we're going to get the user input that they just entered. And to do that, you go next line. Now, depending upon the type of data you are accepting, you're going to use a different value for here and a different value for here. This just returns true if they entered the right data type. This actually gets the data that they entered. And here you can see in Eclipse, it gave me a little error message saying, hey, you haven't created set name yet. Real easy to do that. It's a good idea to have both setters and getter files so that we can access these variables that are up here that are marked as private, all these guys. And how you do that inside of Eclipse is you right click and you go in here to source and you come over here and you say generate getters and setters. You're going to see what they look like. Come over here, say select all. We're not going to have a setter and a getter for number of animals because the constructor handles that. Can't change favorite number. User input's user input, doesn't have anything to do with the object, and that's also why it's static. See these little S's here? But every animal does have an age, a favorite character, or at least in my world it does, an owner, height, name, speed, unique ID, and weight. Alright, so we're going to create those. And each one of those is going to be public. Boom! And you can see right here what they do. This is going to return whatever the value for name is, and this is going to allow you to set the value for name. And you can see there, this is being used, again, reference to the object. But let's get back up in here. The different values that are available, remember this is going to return true if they enter the right data type. This is for strings whenever we use line. If we are instead receiving integers, it's going to be changed to an int, like that. If we're going to be receiving floats, you're just going to type in float, so it's easy to remember. If it's going to return a double, boolean, and then finally, byte. So these guys return true if it's the right data type. And this guy down here, this is really simple. It's going to be next int, next float, next double, and I think you get the picture. So those are the different ways to return data and make sure you get the right data types. And I'm having a copy of this, everything in this program, in the description under the video. Now what I'm going to do is a couple little weird things just so I can demonstrate all the other things in Java. I'm going to go set favorite color, and I'm going to do some weird stuff in there. And this is how you call function, of course. Set unique ID and call that as well. But in this situation, I'm going to get rid of that, even though it's going to cause an error, because I'm going to create my own version of set unique ID in what's called method overloading, which just means that there's different types of attributes or data that you can send through here. So if you have multiple different versions of this function, however, the attributes or the data it accepts are different, you can do that. You can have the same function name and it doesn't cause any problem. So let's go down inside of unique ID and create that guy. And here you can see it right here. To method overload, all you do, use the same name, boom, and you just change the attribute. You can never have the same attributes inside of there, or at least the data types can't be the same. So you couldn't go in here and type in long, unique ID. Well, as you just saw, the data types have to be different for this to work. So I'm going to come in here to the original. I'm going to say unique ID set to +, this unique ID. And you can also see these things pop up over here, so you don't have to memorize everything. And I did that just because I'm going to do something a little bit weird here. Here they don't get the unique ID sent to them, so what we're going to do is we're going to generate a random number. So I'm going to create a long, and it's going to have a minimum number, which is going to be equal to 1. And I'm going to create another one called max number, and we're going to generate a random number. Can't use commas, by the way, from 1 to 1,000,000. Actually, we could put 1,000,000 inside of an int, but I'm just doing it this way. Now, to generate a random number and store it in the unique ID for our animal, you're going to type in minimum number is equal to, and don't try to memorize all this stuff, especially if you're new. Long, but I doubt new people hung around for this. Math, random, you just call math random number. It's going to generate a series of numbers between 0 and 1, so that's how it's going to generate all of them. And then you're going to multiply that times, put multiple braces inside of there, the max number that you want to generate minus the minimum number you want to generate, and then come inside of there, and then go +1. And always put a semicolon at the very, very end of every one of your statements, if I didn't say that already. Now you can see this guy right here, long. Well, the reason why we have a long there is we're casting. Whenever we do all this stuff over here, math random generates or returns a double. Remember? Gives you a number between 0 and 1, a bunch of fractions. So if I want that to be converted into a long, I need to tell it I want it to be a long. And that is how we call, or that is what we call casting. You want to cast to a byte, you just do exactly the same thing. You want to cast to an int, you do exactly the same thing. If you want to cast to a long, you just saw that. Okay, so you get the point there as well. And these data types are what are called primitives. You either have primitive data types or you have objects. If you want to convert from a primitive to a string, you just go string number, you can type anything there, that's just a name, is equal to. If you want to convert this long into a string, you just type in long to string, and then pass in whatever you want converted. Here, it's going to be maximum number. Remember, strings are just series of characters, and a string is an object. Likewise, you could type in byte to string, and then pass in whatever you want converted into a byte. And then once again, integer, like that, float with an uppercase, or double with an uppercase. All those things. And then if you want to convert from a string into a primitive, you can do that as well. So let's say we want to take int, number string is its name. You would go integer dot parse int. And then you put inside of here whatever you want to be converted into an int. Likewise, double, float, long, byte, boolean, all those different things. And the only thing you're going to change is this is going to be the uppercase version of whatever data type you want to convert from into an integer. Okay, so these things match, integer, integer, there you go. And then you're going to also change this thing, except this is going to remain int, or you can have long, or you can have float, or you can have whatever. But this time it's an int. And in this situation, come up here, and at the end of this, print out the same exact thing. Now what I'm going to do is overload set favorite color, and I'm just doing this again just to demonstrate stuff. This doesn't receive anything. Here I'm working with characters, so let's say that I want to do a random number, and I want to cast this into an int. Again, put the equal sign in there, call math random, and I don't want to go over 126, and the reason why is this is what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be getting different characters at random, and this is the number that's going to pop back, or that I'm going to use to get those characters. And these are all of them, whole bunch of them. And if you scroll through them, you're going to get to 127, and at 127, that's when you don't have a lot of things, okay? So that's why I only want to use from 1 to 127, or 26, I mean. So 126. And then I'm going to put +1 in there so that it doesn't return that 0. Alright, then if I want to convert to a character, equal to character, random number. So I just converted this into an int, and then I converted that int into a character. Now we'll cover the if-then-else statement. Now you can make different comparisons inside of Java using greater than, less than, equals to, not equal to, greater than or equal to, or less than and equal to. And here, I'm going to go if random number is equal to 32. In this situation, 32 represents a space, which means nothing's going to get printed out on the screen. So instead, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say favorite character set to space and print that out on the screen because there's no way to print a space. Else, if random number is equal to 10, 10 in this character set is going to be a new line. Again, that doesn't work, and I'll just change this to new line, okay? And then what I can do, by default, if neither of those occur, print this out, set to, and then just put in plus this favorite character, and make sure you put a period between there. And there you go. Now there are also things called logical operators. And you're basically going to have an exclamation point, which is going to convert a Boolean value to its right into the opposite. So it's going to turn trues into falses and falses into trues. Have a single and, which returns true if the Boolean value on the right and left are both true, and it always evaluates both values. You're not going to use that very much. And is what you're going to use all the time. It's going to return true if the Boolean value on the right and left are both true, just like the other one, except it stops evaluating after the first false. You're going to have a single or, again, it's going to return true if either Boolean value on the right or left are true, and it always evaluates both Boolean values. And then you have double or, which is going to return true if either Boolean value on the left or right are true. It's going to stop evaluating. And then you have this last guy, it's going to return true if there is one true and one false. So it's basically going to force there to be one true and one false, sort of like an OR. So let's use these guys. Let's say we want to go random number greater than 97, and so we want both of these to be true. Random number less than 122. If that occurs, this out, favorite character is a lowercase letter. So you can see exactly how that works. And if we want to do another one, let's just copy this. Greater than 97, less than 122. We're going to use both of those. I'm actually going to put in another brace right here and another brace here. And I'm going to copy this interior part here. And here I'm going to go OR like that. And then I'm going to put in another one. So both of these, or it's going to check one of the or the other needs to be true. So here it's going to be 64. Again, I'm just using those character codes from that website I just showed you a second ago. 91. And if this occurs, favorite character is a letter. That's what we just verified there with that. And like I said before, if you want to turn a true into a false, exclamation point, true is going to return false. Same thing. Type in false, this is going to return true. And yes, you do use that all the time. Then if you want to do another comparison, so let's use the ternary operator for this. Let's say which is bigger is equal to, and let's say we have 50 greater than random number. In this situation, question mark, 50. This is like a shortcut way to assign either or another value to a number. Random number, boom. So if random number is less than 50, which is bigger is going to get the value of 50. If, however, this comes back as false, random number is going to be assigned to which is bigger. So if this is true, you get this value. If this is false, you get the other value. So that's a ternary operator. Then another way to compare when you have a limited number of values you're working with is called a switch statement. And to use it, just go switch, random number. There's those braces again. And in this situation, you go case, and the number I'm looking for is 8. And the data types you can use here, right there, like I have for 8, is going to be either an int, byte, or character, or if you're using Java 7 or above, you can use strings. The only thing is if you're using characters, you have to put single quotes around this. And if you're using strings, you put double quotes around them. So in this situation, if random number has the value of 8, we want to print out something special here, and that's going to be favorite character set to backspace. Alright, so that's going to be printed out. And then after you're done and you want to leave the switch statement, you hit break. Break throws you out. You could do the same for a whole bunch of these different guys. So let's say we wanted to, if you want to check against multiple different values, let's just paste this in here. You could go 10, 11, 12, and that would, execute this system out if the value for random number was 10, 11, or 12. And then if you want to define a default action, if none of the above work out, you're going to type in default and then sys out something. And then after that, break. Actually, technically, don't have to put break there. So break throws you out of the switch statement and down here to whatever follows after this brace. Now let's get past all these getters and setters and start creating some different functions. Protected, again, means only things in the package are going to be able to access this. Static means that it belongs to the class and not to the individual objects created. You can think of them as utility sorts of things because they really have nothing to do with the object except they're in there. And here this is just going to count. And we're going to count by using a for statement, which is going to continue performing certain actions as long as a condition is true. It's a way of looping. Here, what you're going to do is you're going to take the starting number that was passed inside of there and initialize that to I. Then you're going to put in your condition as long as I is less than or equal to 100 in this situation. We're going to continue looping, and then I++. We're going to increment I each time we go through the loop. What we specifically want to do in this situation is we want to skip printing out 90 to the screen. The way we would do that is if I is equal to 90, continue. You could put this inside of braces if you want, but you don't need to. Continue is going to jump out of this current iteration of going through the loop, go back up here and increment I by 1. So it's never going to get here if I is equal to 90. It's not going to get the system out. It's going to jump back up here, iterate to I, and then continue on. And then just put an I in there, and that's going to print out the starting number to 100. Protected, static, string, print numbers. This is also going to print. I'm just demonstrating a different way of doing it. Int max numbers, because I want to show you how the while loop works. Now with the while loop, you have to put whatever you want to increment outside of the while loop, and you have to give it a starting value. and it's going to continue performing certain actions while this condition right here is still true. So I'm going to go max numbers that were passed into it, and this while loop is going to print out the first half, and then this function we just made up here is going to print out the second half. Okay, I know it's goofy, I'm just doing it just to do something. There we go, sys out, print I, then we have to increment inside of the while loop also. That's how the while and the for change from each other. Want to reiterate that if you want to jump outside of a loop completely, you go like this, max numbers divided by 2, type break. That's going to jump us out of this while loop, and there you go. That's how the while loop works. And then finally, you may have noticed up here previously I had void for a lot of functions. Void just means it doesn't return anything when it's done executing. String means it's going to return a string to whoever calls it. And what I'm going to do, since this is a static, I have to refer to this function up here, count2, by putting the class name ahead of it. Max numbers divided by 2 is what we're going to pass to that. And then at the end of it, you can either return a string variable, or you can just type the string inside of here in this situation. Do something like that. You do another thing. There's another way of conditionally looping through, and it's called the do while. And I'm going to actually use a real world scenario here. Protected, static, void, guess my number is going to be the name of this. Going to define an integer number. Don't give it a value. And what the do while loop does is it guarantees it's going to execute at least one time. And that works particularly well whenever we're asking for user input. In this situation, we're going to have them guess a number. Guess number up to 100. Now what we want to do is we want to verify that they entered an integer. How do we do that? While, put the not in there, user input has next int. So if it has an integer that they just entered, then we're not going to do this. If, however, they enter a character or something else that's not an integer, then we're going to come inside of here. I'm going to go string, number entered is equal to user input, using that scanner again, next. And if you want to print a string directly inside of here in an odd place instead of at the end, is not a number. New line is going to give us a break. And then at the end of this, you're going to put a comma and number entered. There you go. Except this is not print line, this is print F. Sorry about that, wasn't thinking. And if instead of a string you want to use either a byte, short, int, or long, you would put a D in there instead of an S. So a D right here. If you want to use a float or a double, you would put an F inside of here. And let's say that you'd want to define that it have at least 2 decimal places. You put 0.2 inside of there. This is a string, so I'm going to leave that be a string. Okay, in the for instance in which they actually enter an integer like we asked them to, we're not going to get to that while loop. So we're going to say number is equal to user input. We're going to get new input from them. And we're going to keep executing everything here while the number is not equal to 50. And then put a semicolon at the end there. Okay, so this is going to execute until they enter the number 50 into the input. So that's 50 is our secret number. Then you could print out something that says, yay, you got the number. Okay. Now what I want to do is demonstrate something called polymorphism, which sounds very complicated, but it completely is not. All right, this is going to return a string, and it's going to be very, very simple. Return grr. Okay, so every animal by default is going to return grr whenever the make sound is called. Also going to create another one that's going to demonstrate polymorphism. Static void. With this guy, we're going to be able to pass in here. It's not going to return anything. That's what void means. Speak animal. This guy is going to accept any animal type, even if it's a dog or a cat, which we're going to create here in a second. And even if this method makes sound and dog and animal are changed, it's going to automatically print out the right animal sound. That's part of polymorphism. So we'll just say animal says rand animal that was passed inside of here, make sound, and it will execute the right method. I'm going to show you that here in a second. Actually, let's just do it. So remember I said dog gets everything the animal has. Create the constructor for this. And this time it's not going to do anything. I don't really care. Then I'm going to override that make sound method for my dog. And my dog animals are going to return wolf instead of grr. So this is going to override that. My cat is also going to override it. Make sure the constructor is cat. Can't have the constructor for dog inside a cat. And make sound is exactly the same. Don't change anything. And this is meow. And let's just put a main function here. And what we can do is go animal Fido is equal to new dog. of course. You can also go animal Fluffy is equal to new cat. See, I'm not calling them cat objects, I'm calling them animal objects. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create an array. I'm going to give you more demonstrations of what an array is. It's just a series of boxes. What we're going to do is this array has to contain the same data type. So this becomes a nice, easy way to store multiple animal subtypes in an array. Let's call this array the animals equal to new animal. This is how we create an array, and you have to define the fixed size of the array whenever you create it. Then what I can do is say in the array, in box number 0, that's where all the arrays start, 0, put Fido, and in box number 1, put Fluffy. See, these are objects in boxes. Now I can say Fido says 0, make sound, and then I can do the same exact thing for Fluffy, even though they are referred to as animals. It's going to have the right one do it, or the right function execute. Fluffy says, just change this to 1, and some of this other stuff's popping up here. Let's just say Fido, I don't care. You can see all the other stuff that printed out here, and then you can see down here at the very end, Fido says wolf, Fluffy says meow. I'm going to let you guys execute all this stuff on your own so you learn how this stuff works. Of course, you can just copy and paste it or type it all in. And then, of course, we could also call that function that we talked about before that's in the animal. We could just pass in a Fluffy, and it's going to pass it in as an animal type, but it's going to have the right thing get entered. And there you can say animal says meow. Jump back over into animal and demonstrate a couple other things. Now, like I said before, an array is just a fixed series of boxes that contain multiple values of the same data type. And you can create an array in a couple different ways, like this, and then say favorite number, for example. And then on the next one, whenever you initialize it with whatever you want, or you actually know how many boxes you're going to need, favorite number equal new int 20, for example. That's going to give you 20 boxes to store integer data types inside of it. Or another thing you could do is just initialize it all at once. Different situations are going to have you do different things. Then, of course, the very first box inside of every array is labeled 0, and then they increment from there. So I want to store 100 inside of there. There it goes. Change this to numbers. I can also create string arrays, and if I know what the value is going to be up front, I can go random, words, separated by commas, here, curly brace at the end. That's going to put those 3 things inside of that string. Then I can cycle through this data by just putting string, which is going to be the data type for each individual thing inside of there. Word is going to be a variable that's going to store each one of these guys. And then string array is the string array right here. So it's going to cycle through every single one of those one by one, store the value temporarily in Word, and then here we'll print out Word. So that's one way to print out all the strings. Then you have multi-dimensional arrays, boxes inside of boxes. So let's do something really complicated. Let's do 3 of them. Array name is equal to, and I'm going to explain what this means here in a second. So let's say 0, 0, 0, and there you go. So you might be really confused by what the heck is actually going on here. So I'll explain it. Okay, so you saw if you want to create an array, this is how you create an array that's going to have 3 boxes, 2 boxes. This is how we're going to put 3 digits in there that we know ahead of time. And this guy right here is actually going to return 16, which is item number 1, which is this is 0, 1, 2. Okay, multi-dimensional, very complicated, right? I mean, look at that thing, it's nasty. Well, this is basically what is going to happen here. The first box in your array is going to tell you how many boxes you're going to have downwards. The next one's going to have how many across. And then the last one's going to have how many of those groups. Let's look at that in a graphical format. So how many down for the first one? That's going to be 1, 2, 3. See? Down. The next box is going to be how many across? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last one is how many of those groups. Well, in this situation we have 1. In this situation we have 2. As you see, there's 2 and there's 2. Okay, so hopefully multidimensional arrays make sense now. And in the interest of saving some time, this is how you would print out this multidimensional array. If you wanted to print out just one array using a for loop, initialize this to 0 because the first index is 0. You're going to cycle through as long as I is less than the array name length. So this returns the length of the array. And then if you wanted to do another one, you're just going to have that there. Except in this situation, you're going to take the I, put that bracket down there, put length to get the second array length, and then for the third array, and then to print it out, of course, you just go array name followed by IJK. So that's how that for loop would work for that crazy multi-dimensional array. If you want to copy an array, let's go string. This is a string array. Clone of array is equal to arrays copy of string array, and then you tell it how many indexes you want to copy, and that's how you copy it. You can print out the whole entire array really quickly, just going like this, then going arrays toString. You can do toString for pretty much all variables. It's going to print them out. And in this situation, clone of array. Then if you want to do a search to find out if an item is in an array, you go arrays, binary, search, and then you're going to type in clone of array, and then the very specific, don't put that star inside of there, the very specific thing you're looking for. And if it finds it, it will return the index for where it's located, or it will return a negative number. So there is core Java. That's pretty much every single thing about Java. Hopefully you guys liked this. It lived up to your expectations. Again, the code is in the description for the video. Please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.